this morning, I saw a bunch of lumpen elements sponsored by the government, by the State Security Service, to demonstrate in the premises of the court against Mrs. Sowore and Bakare. From that moment, I did some investigation, and I got information while I was in the court that a new charge was going to be filed, and that the Director General of the State Security Service had ordered that Mr. Sowore be abducted in the premises of the court. And that is what is already going on. You will recall that I did inform the court that the order was obeyed yesterday, and that there are new moves to file a new charge. The prosecutor or the prosecution team said in the open court that no such information was available to them. But here we are now. The court is being prevented from carrying out its normal duty because there was a move to forcefully take them away from the court. As officers of the court, we are going to take appropriate steps. As a matter of fact, we have a sister case in court number 5 where we are also challenging the illegal detention for our clients by the State Security Service. But I can assure you, what happened or what is happening now will not go away unchallenged. We either run this country on the platform of the rule of law, or we resort to gangsterism, which is what is going on. Exactly. But we're not going to allow it.
Welcome to another episode of Palo Talk. And today we'll be talking about the recent arrest of Omoyele Sowore, the convener of Revolution Now, and the events over the past few hours regarding his release by the DSS on instruction of Justice Ojukwu, and the rearrest the next day in the courts, which has sent shock through the Nigerian airwaves in the last day or so. First of all, I think every sane Nigeria at this point has to condemn this despicable and brazen abuse of power being demonstrated by the DSS, which some might call the attack dog of this presidency since the inception. We've had the case of Nnamdi Kanu, El-Zazaki, and Omoyele Sowore, where you can say that the presidency or the government of President Muhammadu Buhari keeps overplaying their hands in an attempt to probably drive home their point or pursue an agenda, as the case may be. Because these 3 examples I've given aren't the same thing. They're not. They're different things, but the approach and manner with which they've been dealt with remains the same. First thing, Omoyele Sowore was granted bail by the courts, and the DSS refused to release him, and we've never had any statement from the presidency or the APC as a party denouncing or justifying the reason for the non-release, despite the fact that the DSS came out to say that it wasn't released because there was no surety to collect him. And the judge yesterday, on Thursday, 5th of December, reiterated that sureties were not required to release Omoyele Sowore, and DSS cannot redefine or make their own rules, parallel rules to what the judge has made. and he was released late yesterday, only for this same DSS to attempt to rearrest him in the court today. Well, we've been seeing a lot of despicable things, or condemnable things, I should say, in Nigeria since the start of our democracy in 1999. This is by far the worst, arguably the worst anyone can see. And it is not a partisan thing, it is just a repugnant and despicable act that every sane Nigerian should condemn. Are we all going crazy? How can things like this be justified in any realm, regardless of? Yeah, and I understand the whole benefit of the doubt thing, but regardless of whatever Omoyele Sowore has done or he did before, or where you stand on his, what your position is with his intention behind the Revolution Now movement, the fact that a court of competent jurisdiction asked this guy to be released under different circumstances, 3 different times he's been asked to be released. He was detained beyond the instruction of the court for over 125 days, and you attempted to rearrest him barely 12 hours after his release on fresh charges, some rumored. But what charges? Did he commit these offenses while he's been in prison in the last 4 months, or did he commit the offense within the last 12 hours of his release? No one understands. And to try and manhandle him or sack the court to just arrest Omoyele Sowore, as you see in the video, it's very despicable and unacceptable. And you just wonder where this government, regardless of what good or the positives or the you might want to pick out in how this administration is being run or how different it is, we cannot but condemn in strong terms when things like this happen. Rule of law is sacrosanct to democracy, to our democracy, to be precise. Going back in history, the experience we've had with the military rule, with General Muhammadu Buhari himself as the military head of state, gives people reason to worry and exercise undue caution when incidents like this happen. In one of our episodes on Pilot Talk, we talked about the social media bill and the hate speech bill, and you just ask yourself, when you put these things together, the repeated abuse of or flouting of court order by this administration, the peddling of the hate speech and the social media bill, it just gives you a makeup of a government that is intolerant and a bit authoritarian, a government that does not like the voice of dissent. And I have my reservation about Omoyele Sowore's approach or the whole thing about the revolution now, but that is beside the point at this stage. The focus is, if the law says something should be one way, why do we have a government that keeps redefining it in its own way when their own responsibility under the law is different? When the court suits this government, they're quick to run to court to get court order, injunction, order of forfeiture, order to detain, and what have you. But when this same court they run to issue an order they don't like, they flout the order all in the name of national security, and you wonder, this same government has a vice president who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, a professor of law, and a former attorney general of a state, of Lagos State. And we have the presidency doing things like this. Even under the military regime, it was never this bad to have the DSS sack a court to just arrest a person who the court has instructed you to release. They didn't even attempt to wait till he leaves the courtroom before he is arrested. Kudos and credit to Barrister Femi Falana SAN and his team, who insisted, and other Nigerians that were in court, who insisted that Omoyele Sowore will not be arrested in court, but outside the courtroom. And it just shows how in tatters the dignity of our judicial system is. If a judge can be forced into recess because the DSS just decide to just ignore court process and just attempt to arrest Omoyele Sowore in court, it is beyond imagination, and it is crazy for the want of the right word. And I don't even know how to, what justification or what anyone wants to say about this, other than this cannot be made to stand. And the likes of the Vice President, the Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Festus Keyamo, I don't even know what to say about the Attorney General, because personally I feel like he's more of an attack dog. He's more or less like DSS than any other things, because at the end of the day, he's justified every action of this, every abuse of court process by these governments as national interest trumps right of a citizen. Yes, we know that, and that's always been an exception to fundamental human rights of people. But the doctrine of national interest is one that is to be used sparingly, not at whims and caprices of the president, when it's obvious that the use is because the government or the powers that be do not like what the court is asking it to do. You've got case before the court for Omoyele Sowore. You've not even tried to prosecute the cases before arresting him again. One thing this has shown to Nigerians is the fact that the arrest and the travails of Omoyele Sowore is a political and executive statement by the presidency to just say that they will not take any insolence, any dissent or unwarranted dissent from anybody, and to just deter people from actually convening or just having a collective or loud dissent voice to the government of the day. Because I remember, maybe in loose form, when Two-Face Idibia tried to organize a protest march, it was won by the same DSS, because he came on after organizing and ramping up support for this protest. It came barely 24 hours to the protest, and it was warned not to carry on. And yeah, it did withdraw. So it goes to show that this government is one that hates dissent, and the arrest and the trial of Omoyele Sowore is to make a statement, and that's why they want to continue his incarceration, to just demonstrate their will to just punish, regardless of the rule of law, anyone that has a dissenting view to the government of the day. And it is quite appalling, and it is one thing that Nigerians should not allow to stand. We cannot have this in this current climate. Regardless of whatever good the government or the government of President Muhammadu Buhari feels they trying to achieve, you cannot continue to trample on the rights of Nigerians and the rule of law and expect us to believe we're in democracy. And it's not even enough for Nigerians to just think it's a shame. It's more than a shame. We all should be angry because of what is going on. And I'm afraid that the likes of Omoyele Sowore, whether anyone believes in their cause or not, would end up being immortalized for something that should be part and parcel of democracy. We're not in a military regime where we'll say, yeah, all these things or things similar to this used to happen under the military regime. And that's why the likes of Fela Kuti, Igani Fawoyimi, Femi Falana, Omoyele Sowore as well, and many that I may not necessarily mention now, have marked the annals in the history of Nigeria as fighting for the same democracy. Now we have this democracy. Now we have a government whose head is acting like a despot when its operatives is the State Security Service or Departments of State Service are just abusing and trampling on the rights of citizens, and they just fold their hands or are too silent on it. In a sane climate, the National Assembly would wade in as quickly as possible to put a marker down that the powers of the judiciary cannot be encroached into by the executive, and I hope they do so, because yeah, a lot of people have already been talking about having a rubber stamp National Assembly, and I hope this will be addressed as soon as possible. Other societies will probably call the executive to appear before National Assembly, and it could be seen as an abuse of power in a sane setting. But we all just seem to be okay or managing the situation. This is an assault on every Nigerian, regardless of whether you're related with Omoyele Sowore or not. I saw the video of Omoyele Sowore's mother a couple of days ago appealing to the federal government to release her son. Why? Why does she have to appeal for her son to be given his rights? Omoyele Sowore is in the news now, and everyone is kind of talking about it because he is a known popular person. What happens to a common man who just has a dissenting view? I don't understand. So this flagrant abuse and insulting of the intelligence of Nigerians, it's completely condemnable, and it's one thing that Nigerians should not stand for in any way. Yeah, we've had cases of insurgency, we've had cases of banditry, we've had cases of cattle herders and cattle rustlers. We're still fighting Boko Haram, and here and there, we've got amnesty granted to some to bandits in Katsina State a few months ago. So we're negotiating with people that are actually taking up arms against the country, and when people voice of dissent about what they're not happy about, and we feel what we can do is to make a statement out of them contrary to the rule of law. This cannot be allowed to stand, Nigerians. This cannot be allowed to stand.
New Jersey is watching, the United States is watching, and the world is watching. I fear that the blatant harassment of Mr. Sowore and activists and journalists whose only crime appears to be exercising his right to free expression is becoming symptomatic of increasingly closing political and civic space in Nigeria. The Nigerian court had twice ordered his release on bail, and the state security agencies openly defied the court order each time, leading me to conclude either that Nigeria no longer respects the rule of law, or President Buhari is woefully out of touch with what agents of his government are doing in his name.